Monsieur Trudeau.
Bonjour tout le monde. J'ai bien hâte de m'asseoir avec les premiers ministres cet après-midi pour parler de comment on va livrer des résultats pour les citoyens à travers le pays dans notre système de santé. Ça va être un début de conversation où on espère pouvoir livrer de l'argent aux provinces dans les semaines, dans les mois à venir, mais ça dépendra des conversations que nous allons avoir. Mais on est vraiment axé sur un travail constructif qui va livrer pour les Canadiens. Looking forward to sitting down with the premiers this afternoon to talk about how we're going to make investments in healthcare together that are going to deliver real results for Canadians. Canadians are proud of our universal public healthcare system, but we all have to recognize it hasn't been delivering at the level that Canadians would expect. That's why sitting down with the provinces, working collaboratively, investing significantly in priority areas is going to move us forward in the right way.
Sur la loi sur les langues officielles, c'est les langues officielles. Monsieur Drouin, ce matin, a dit que vos collègues anglophones députés font un show de boucan. Est-ce que vous dénoncez les propos de vos députés anglophones? Puis est-ce que vous appuyez toujours le projet de loi C-13 que vos députés critiquent?
En tant que gouvernement, on a toujours mis de l'avant une reconnaissance que non seulement on doit protéger les deux langues officielles à travers le pays, mais on doit particulièrement protéger le français et particulièrement et même au Québec. C'est pour ça qu'on travaille avec le gouvernement du Québec depuis longtemps. On est en train d'avancer avec la loi C-13 qui non seulement va protéger les communautés linguistiques minoritaires à travers le pays, mais qui va renforcer le Québec, le français au Québec aussi.
On Turkey, sir.
Do you expect the provinces to maintain their level of healthcare funding?
Sorry?
Do you expect the provinces to maintain their current levels of healthcare funding, or are there going to be provisions preventing them from reducing their funding if they get more federal dollars after this?
Well, we know how important this work is collaborative, so we need everyone's efforts, given the situation in which workers and patients are finding themselves these days and these years, because we know the challenges will continue for years to come. So we expect everyone to put forward the resources and the plan that they need to do so.
Combien est-ce que vous êtes prêts à mettre sur la table? Comment est-ce... Parce que le premier ministre a dit qu'il allait avoir de l'argent sur la table. On ne sait pas encore si vous allez donner aux provinces ce qu'elles veulent. Qu'est-ce que vous prévoyez leur offrir?
Il va y avoir deux choses cet après-midi. Des choses qui ne sont pas encore connues, ça va être partagé avec les premiers ministres des provinces, puis des choses qui sont déjà connues. Ce qui n'est pas encore connu, ce sont les dollars qui vont être ajoutés au montant déjà existant que l'on a promis au cours des prochaines années. Et la deuxième chose qui est connue, ce sont les raisons pour lesquelles ces dollars vont être importants, c'est-à-dire investir dans l'accès à des soins de santé familiales qui font malheureusement cruellement défaut, en particulier en milieu rural et éloigné au Canada. La santé mentale, qui est un enjeu majeur pour tout le monde et pour les jeunes en particulier, les soins de santé dans les milieux plus défavorisés, les endroits où les gens n'ont pas accès à des soins dont ils ont besoin. On sait qu'il y a dans un grand pays comme le Canada, beaucoup de considérations de ce type. Et finalement, un système de santé mondial, où les travailleurs peuvent travailler davantage ensemble, en sauvant des vies, en partageant l'information clinique dont ils ont besoin pour garantir la santé et la sécurité des gens.
À quel point vous êtes confiant d'avoir des ententes signées avant le dépôt du prochain budget fédéral? À quel point vous êtes confiant? Comment qualifieriez-vous votre niveau de confiance?
Bien, comme on l'entend et comme on le sent depuis déjà plusieurs semaines, ça va bien. Ça va de mieux en mieux parce que tout le monde travaille ensemble sur les résultats qui sont importants pour les patients et pour les travailleurs. Donc, je crois que ce climat de confiance, ce climat de positivité et d'optimisme pour l'avenir va être encore présent cet après-midi lorsque les premiers ministres auront la chance de se rencontrer et lorsque M. Trudeau aura la chance de leur présenter le plan additionnel à celui qu'on a déjà évidemment mis en place au cours des dernières années.
One question in English, please. Can you explain whether or not you can stop any of the Canada Health transfers from going into private services for health? Is there any way you can put conditions on that, and can you actively enforce it?
Fulfilling the obligations of the Canada Health Act is everyone's responsibility, and my own responsibility in particular as Federal Minister of Health. I will do everything that I can do, and I know my colleagues, health ministers in provinces and territories, have also said they would do so to protect the integrity of our publicly funded healthcare system. I am confident that this is going to continue for months and years to come, but if that were not to be the case, there are things that I can do as Federal Health Minister, including emitting fines for not respecting the obligation of the Canada Health Act.
Will you hold that money?
Thank you.
How are you? Good morning to you. I was hoping you could could answer a couple questions about healthcare. Are you concerned at all that the federal government will not be able to put any conditions on the provinces in terms of preventing public funds from being used for private services?
I'm not concerned at all that we won't have a very positive, constructive discussion today. We've been looking forward to this. We have done a lot of work to prepare for this meeting, as have the provinces and territories. With respect to the private health care delivery, we've been clear that the provinces are expected and will be held to the Canada Health Act. But the good news is they're saying the same thing to us. So the conversations we're going to have this afternoon, as I say, will very much be focused on what we can do collaboratively in terms of our shared priorities. You don't have to turn on the radio or the television or look online to see that there are huge stresses in the healthcare system in every part of the country. So Canadians properly expect us to collaborate constructively, and that's what today's about, and I'm actually looking forward to it. I woke up this morning, big smile on my face. I thought, it's going to be a great day.
What are those shared priorities?
Bien, la réaction à date, en termes de conversations que nous avons eues sur une base bilatérale, j'ai parlé à plusieurs premiers ministres hier. M. Trudeau et moi, on a parlé à Mme Stephenson, par exemple, du Manitoba. La réaction est très encourageante. Je pense que tout le monde arrive à la réunion aujourd'hui avec un esprit ouvert. Les gens, je pense, ont bien hâte d'entamer une discussion détaillée. C'est précisément qu'est-ce que M. Trudeau va débuter après le lunch aujourd'hui. Alors, moi, je suis encouragé par la réaction publique et privée des provinces, mais on verra à la fin de la journée. Moi, je pense que les Canadiens s'attendent avec raison qu'on trouve un terrain d'entente qui va améliorer le système, qui va améliorer les résultats pour les patients. Moi-même, j'ai passé 2 mois dans un hôpital à Montréal, Maisonneuve-Rosemont. J'ai vu moi-même les gens qui travaillent là, comment extraordinaires qu'ils sont, les difficultés qu'ils font face tout de suite. Alors moi, je vais faire ma petite part en partenariat avec mes collègues et les premiers ministres des provinces pour donner espoir aux patients et aux personnes qui travaillent dans le système de soins de santé qu'on a trouvé une façon d'améliorer et vite les circonstances.
Sur la loi, c'est l'entretien sur la loi.
Petipas Taylor, sur ces 13, comment se fait-il qu'au sein de votre caucus, il semble y avoir autant d'opposition quand il est question de parler des droits des francophones?
Mais
on parle entre autres de Francis Drouin qui dit qu'il y a des collègues au sein de votre caucus qui font un show de boucan par rapport à ces 13, c'est-à-dire des gens sur l'île de Montréal qui souhaiteraient qu'on ne fasse pas référence, entre autres, à la charte de la langue française dans ces 13, qu'il faut protéger les droits des anglophones, mais que tout ça semble se faire aux dépens des anglophones, alors que les francophones, encore une fois, sont mis de côté. Je résume très grossièrement. Comment se fait-il qu'au sein de votre parti, cette dissension vient de l'interne, alors que le NPD, le Bloc, est prêt à appuyer ces 13?
Mais encore une fois, moi, comme ministre des langues officielles, j'ai le mandat très clair du premier ministre de tout faire pour protéger et promouvoir le français. Nous avons été très clairs dans le discours du trône en 2020, ainsi que dans ma lettre de mandat. Ça fait que nous allons l'avant avec un projet de loi qui est fort, qui est ambitieux. Nous voulons tout faire pour adresser le déclin du français au pays, y compris le Québec, tout en appuyant les communautés de langues officielles en situation minoritaire. Puis nous autres, on va de l'avant avec un projet de loi, un bon projet de loi, qui est fort, qui est efficace, puis qui va faire le travail nécessaire.
Mais sur les propos, M. Drouin, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec lui? Est-ce que les collègues, les députés anglophones de Montréal mènent un show de boucan? Êtes-vous d'accord avec ce que M. Drouin dit?
Moi, je vous dis clairement que les membres du caucus puis les membres du comité de langue font un travail qui est essentiel. C'est important de débattre nos projets de loi, et puis c'est important que nos députés vont avoir l'opportunité de partager leur point de vue.
Mais là, vous êtes d'accord avec ça que c'est des gens à l'intérieur de votre propre parti soumettent des amendements à votre projet de loi pour l'affaiblir, en d'autres mots?
Encore une fois, le travail qui se passe au comité, nos membres du comité sont quand même des membres autonomes. On ne dit pas à nos membres quoi dire. C'est très important de s'assurer qu'ils vont avoir les débats nécessaires. Puis parfois, il va y avoir des débats qui sont musclés. Moi, en tant que ministre des langues officielles, mon objectif, c'est de faire sûr qu'on va passer le projet de loi C13, puisque le projet de loi C13 va faire une réelle différence pour la question de promouvoir le français, puis aussi de s'assurer qu'on peut adresser le déclin du français. En tant que fière acadienne, pour moi, C13, c'est une priorité. priorité chez nous, non seulement pour moi chez nous, mais pour les francophones à l'extérieur du Québec, à l'intérieur du Québec, puis aussi pour appuyer nos communautés langues officielles en situation minoritaire. Le Parti libéral est le parti des langues officielles. C'est nous, souvent, qui vont faire avancer l'agenda. Et puis, comme fière acadienne, moi, je vais faire sûr qu'on va voir le passage.
Est-ce que vous avez fait avancer l'agenda en ce moment? Croyez-vous que le parti fait avancer l'agenda des communautés?
Encore une fois, je suis très convaincue que le projet de loi, c'est un bon projet de loi. Nous allons continuer à faire sûr que nous allons faire notre juste accord pour voir le passage du projet de loi. Merci.
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 Hey guys, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec les propos de vos collègues anglophones au Québec sur la loi 85, notamment avec cette phrase?
Le débat actuel, c'est sûr que ça soulève beaucoup de passion. Moi, comme Québécois francophone, je m'intéresse à ce qu'il y ait plus de Français, qu'on protège le français au Québec et ailleurs. Donc, il y a des personnes qui ont des inquiétudes par rapport au projet de loi, c'est correct. Mais, ultimement, c'est le projet du gouvernement. C'est un projet de loi qui vient renforcer le travail au niveau de la langue officielle, qui vient protéger, promouvoir le français au Québec et à l'extérieur du Québec. Et moi, je m'attends qu'on en discute, qu'on en débatte. Fine. Mais qu'en bout de ligne, on aille de l'avant.
Mais vous avez vos collègues qui sont comme un parti d'opposition à l'intérieur de votre propre parti.
Je l'ai dit tantôt, c'est normal que ça soulève des passions de part et d'autre.
Là,
Pour moi, fondamentalement, là, comme francophone, là, je veux vraiment que le projet de loi contienne des garanties pour protéger le français. Et il le fait. Et il y a des collègues, francophones ou d'ailleurs, qui ont des inquiétudes. C'est normal qu'on en débatte. Mais encore une fois, je l'ai dit tantôt.
L'inquiétude puis présenter des amendements, c'est deux choses.
Il est temps. Là, je pense qu'on en discute. C'est beau. Maintenant, on va de l'avant.
Would you mind answering that in English? Our French colleagues, there's a lot of pressure on Ms. El-Gawabi to resign. Is this causing tension within the Liberals, and are you feeling pressure to ask her to resign as well?
Well, I had the chance to sit down with her in one-to-one meeting for about an hour and a half. And we had the chance to have that open conversation where I explained about Quebec, about Quebecers, the role of religion in our history, the role of the Quiet Revolution, also how things changed. And I think it was a very open, transparent conversation. She did apologize for her comments, and it wouldn't be the first person that hurt people, and I was hurt, but that should be allowed to be given a second chance.
Mais en même temps, c'est les 200 personnes qui...
Monsieur MacKinnon, votre collègue, M. Drouin, ce matin, qualifie les propos des députés anglophones de choc boucan. Il y a du va-et-vient entre les deux. Est-ce que le caucus est divisé sur la loi sur les langues officielles?
La loi sur les langues officielles, c'est un engagement dans notre plateforme, puis on entend respecter notre...
Donc, vous dites à vos députés anglophones, arrêtez.
Ce que nous allons avoir le débat, nous allons amener un projet de loi en Chambre, mais nous allons le voter et c'est un engagement solennel qu'on a pris et on entend le respecter.
Mais vous connaissez ça des députés qui essayent d'édulcorer un projet de loi déposé par votre parti. C'est comme un parti d'opposition à l'intérieur de votre propre parti.
Je ne caractérise pas les débats qui peuvent avoir lieu sur une loi aussi fondamentale que celle-là, mais on a pris un engagement, on entend le respecter.
Vous êtes le whip, là. C'est un outil de discipliner les gens du caucus.
Il y a des débats c'est une loi fondamentale et on entend réformer cette loi et c'est un engagement solennel. On entend le respecter. Écoutez, on est dans une démocratie, les gens sont élus, font valoir leur point de vue, c'est une loi fondamentale, on entend respecter notre engagement.
Quand c'est de la désinformation, est-ce que c'est acceptable?
Monsieur Vandal, qu'est-ce que vous pensez des efforts de Mme Dominic Leblanc pour donner moins de mordeur à la loi sur les langues officielles?
J'ai...
Votre collègue libéral.
Je ne suis pas au courant sur les récentes nouvelles d'elle, mais je sais que la nouvelle loi sur les langues officielles, c'est tellement important pour ma communauté, c'est Boniface Saint-Vital. Ça fait longtemps qu'on travaille dessus et on est tout hâte pour avoir le projet de loi adopté.
Est-ce que votre caucus est divisé là-dessus? M. Drouin, votre collègue François Drouin critique vos députés anglophones. Est-ce que votre caucus est d'accord sur le projet de loi? Parce que ça ne semble pas être le cas.
On est d'accord. Ça fait des années qu'on travaille sur la modernisation du projet de loi et on est très hâte que ça va être adopté. Merci.
Minister Sajjan, can we ask you about the situation in Turkey and what Canada is planning to do to help?
First of all, my condolences goes to all the loved ones who have been affected by this horrible disaster. Canada will be committing the initial $10 million for the initial response, and we're conducting a needs assessment to look at what will be the next steps. More details will be provided on this shortly. But I also want to emphasize that when any time a disaster strikes, Canada actually funds the UN for when it comes to their disaster assistance response teams. 2 teams have already been deployed to start conducting the needs assessment. We're also looking at various other options, medical teams, heavy urban search and rescue, and I know that also Minister Nunn is looking at options for the DART as well.
So no Canadian teams at this point have been...
Right now, we have to conduct the assessments. We have to figure out, all that information has to be kind of worked out. Nothing's off the table. But we'll look at any options. When it comes to disasters like this, and when we have to respond very quickly, we have to look. We work on well-established organizations that can respond. Once we have an assessment of what the situation is on the ground, then we can take a look at what are the unique needs. Now, keep in mind, a lot of the earthquakes are also taking place in Syria, where there is a civil war going on, and we're very mindful of this. Fortunately, we had already authorized $50 million for humanitarian support in Syria early on, even before the earthquake, and fortunately this money now can at least start flowing to the population there. But we'll also take a look at options of what we can do in Syria, but through the Red Crescent there, we will be able to provide support. I don't know if you know this, but also one of the cities that were affected, Gaziantep, I don't know if I have the pronunciation right, is actually a UN humanitarian hub. So supplies are already starting to flow. We're also looking at our Canadian hubs as well, one in Dubai and in Mississauga, on what we can provide. But we'll be working today to look at the assessment and look at what more we can provide.
Any considerations of doing a matching fund? Are you worried about the aid money getting to where it needs to go in Syria, especially? Charity aid groups have raised concerns about that.
No, that's a very good point. In fact, actually, this is one of the reasons why when we, in any type of crisis zone, we are very mindful of where the money goes and why we want to work with trusted organizations that have a good track record to provide this support. So that's something that we're very mindful of. And to answer your question about a matching fund, yes, we actually are considering, just looking at the options right now.
Do you have any idea how long this assessment will take and when Canada will be able to start sending?
Anytime, like this is ongoing. In fact, actually, just from yesterday, from the assessments, this is one of the reasons why we came up with the initial $10 million. Normally for disasters, we're actually, usually we start a little bit lower, but given the magnitude, based on the feedback we were getting, why we're actually going higher. Once we have more, we'll be able to move very quickly. I'll be contacting the various heavier urban search and rescue teams to take a look at what we can deploy. In fact, actually, this is something that we were already looking at in terms of capacity building training for various parts of the world for disaster response.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here. So, look, first of all, this is an absolute disaster that's playing out in Turkey and Syria. I've had the chance to connect with some members of my community, perhaps most notably Tara Kadad, who's become very well known as a successful newcomer to Canada after fleeing very challenging circumstances in Syria. They're absolutely devastated. To see a scenario play out like this demands that the whole world think of what they can do. Of course, in 48 hours to put together plans to respond when you're dealing with an immigration system that over the course of Canada's history has been designed to respond to massive displacement over a series of years, not a matter of hours. You can appreciate it may take some time to formulate the appropriate response. Understanding whether a natural disaster like this will actually cause a migration crisis remains to be seen. But of course, we watch very closely. And I should say not only from an immigration point of view, but also global affairs and international development to figure out what the best response may be. So as it stands now, we're watching the situation very closely, but we need to better understand the dynamics from a migration point of view before we understand what the best path forward will look like.
Would you consider fast-tracking?
Sorry, we started here. I'll come back. Give me a moment.
In the context of people who are waiting for resettlement from that part of the world, I mean, much of Syria's migration crisis is on that border. They're hoping for resettlement in Canada. What can you say today to sponsors who might be waiting for people to come over? What impact do you think this will have on getting people out who are already supposed to be coming to Canada?
Yeah, so one of the things that obviously developed over the last number of years since we formed government was a significant increase in the number of Syrian refugees who are coming to Canada. And what we've seen on the back end of that initial commitment of 25,000 that we made as part of the 2015 election campaign was a lot of families seeking to be reunited with people from the region who they care about and want to be reunited with. The total number is closer to 80,000 now. We are trying to assess right now who is within Canada's immigration program or who has designs on coming to determine whether they've been impacted. We don't have a full picture of that quite yet. I expect in the days ahead we will have a better understanding of whether people who are destined for Canada have been impacted and what we might need to do differently to accommodate their needs. It's too early to say with certainty exactly what that impact may be and what response may need to shift. But these are the things that over the next number of days and weeks I think we'll have a better handle on. But our goal is to facilitate the resettlement of people who are in the program as quickly as possible with a focus on targeting the people who are most vulnerable first. Of course, a natural disaster that could potentially displace or harm people so significantly is the kinds of factors that we look at, but we need to better understand the actual impact on our clients before we can determine the best path forward. Sorry, I'll go. I made her wait. I'll come back to you in a second, Rafi. Yeah.
Sure. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in regards to the repatriation of non-Canadian children from detention camps, there are 4 non-Canadian mothers who have been asked to relinquish their kids to get them to safety in Canada. Would you consider issuing special or temporary resident status for them, issuing this type of emergency permit so they can be repatriated with their children so as not to separate families?
I want to be very careful not to make a blanket decision when you're dealing with the resettlement of individuals who might come to Canada. Typically, issuing a special temporary visa would still require certain screenings that need to take place, particularly security and health screening to make sure we have integrity of the program and that Canadians can maintain faith that we're doing things in a way that protects national security. That said, family reunification, as somebody who's a parent, is something that weighs very heavily on me. We want to make sure that we do everything we can to keep families united wherever possible. Sometimes the circumstances on the ground can be very challenging, but with respect to the specific instances, we need to look into the individual case files because the result in one situation may not be appropriately applied in a uniform way.
It's my understanding that the case files have been before this government, global affairs specifically, for several years. Have you looked at them and made that assessment? Can you say that separating the mothers from their children would be in the best interest of Canadians and in the best interest of the children?
Look, on individual case files, I'm bound not to speak about the individual details of specific cases, but in every instance, it's one of the most important factors that we look at is the best interest of the child and maintaining a connection between families wherever possible. Of course, with the specific case files you're referring to, we can't offer a specific comment, but as a general principle, it's one of the most important factors we look at when we're making decisions of this kind. So I promise, Rafi,
Are you okay with the idea of Afghan migrants being made to fill out these new special representative forms, even though ostensibly it's the same information to be repeated over and over?
Look, I just, but briefly before I walked out, became aware of the issue that you're referring to in a specific instance that you've raised. Frankly, it seems out of the ordinary given the usual practice that we have over the course of this effort to resettle people, in particular coming from Afghanistan. I'm happy to dig in to better understand the file, and if you do have information about a specific case you want to share with us, we can look into.
It's been shared with your office.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. One of the things that we want to avoid is putting in place bureaucratic hurdles that don't actually add value to the program. What we have seen over the course of this effort that so far has nearly 28,000 Afghans who've arrived and more than 1 million people who've reached out, is sometimes I run into cases that don't go the way that most of them should. However, the majority of them follow a process that we trust that is applied in a relatively uniform way. To the extent there are anomalies, we do end up looking at specific case files if we realize something has gone off the tracks to try to accommodate people where necessary. People who find themselves in desperate situations, often who don't have access to the internet, who don't necessarily have the ability to communicate with the representatives as frequently as people who might be living safely in Canada do, run into challenges that might seem ordinary from a systems point of view, but from a user point of view don't make sense. So we're going to be happy to dig in and try to find a solution. Look, I think everybody who's hired as a new staff needs more training. The reality is, as you point out, since August we've hired now more than 1,250 new staff. We're on track to add another 300 by the end of March. The reality is when you have new staff join, you need to make sure they're trained well, and it often takes 6-8 months before a person is hired, trained, and performing at peak capacity with a true familiarity of how the system works. Whether that is a factor in this particular instance, we don't know. But the reality is, I think across the board, continuous professional development and training is one of the most important things that we can offer to our staff, who are all, by the way, intent on doing the right thing for vulnerable people. But I think we only stand to benefit if we invest in training that improves their performance, because in a department of many thousands of staff who process cases, the number of times you can reduce an error a staff person makes, the better the outcome is going to be. So this is something we talk about on a routine basis in our department, and want to make sure that we put our staff in a position to succeed and for the government to succeed as a result of their work.
Last question, Minister.
Oui, j'espère vous avez des patience avec ma compétence en français, mais je vais essayer. C'est essentiel pour protéger les personnes qui font une demande pour d'asile au Canada, en particulier les personnes qui sont plus vulnérables, incluant les enfants, sont des parents à le moment quand les personnes approchent les frontières. C'est très important parce qu'il y a beaucoup de personnes qui ne comprennent pas les situations. Il y a une exception dans l'entente avec les États-Unis pour les unaccompanied minors, pour les personnes qui cherchaient d'asile à the point of entry. Just en anglais, just pour clarifier. It's really important. The people who are crossing the border, in many instances, are incredibly vulnerable. When you're dealing with children who don't have their parents there to offer them protection, we have to make sure that we're abiding by both our domestic and international legal obligations that are designed to protect some of the world's most vulnerable people. There's an exception baked into the Safe Third Country Agreement for unaccompanied minors to recognize that they are incredibly vulnerable, and in fact, many of them are able to make an asylum claim in the ordinary way who cross even at a port of entry, not just at the chemin de Roxham. This is something that we take very seriously, and we also have to work very closely with the provinces that host people who arrive in such vulnerable circumstances. I note in particular the province of Quebec is facing very serious pressures, and we're working with them to figure out how we can better support their efforts to support people, and also make sure that other provinces are coming to the table to make sure that they have an ability to help contribute to this important effort.
Are you going to compensate the full cost of the social services for that? And then would you say the fact that those minors often end up traveling to Toronto to meet family members?
Sure, and look, every case is different, so I'll answer your questions in reverse order. People who are actually seeking to become reunited with family members who are in Canada don't fall under the same rules under the Safe Third Country Agreement as folks who are showing up with no connection to people in Canada. The rules of asylum vary a little bit under the Safe Third Country Agreement based on family reunification versus those who are purely seeking asylum for themselves. The reality is that there are a number of people who have crossed at Roxham Road who maybe could have made an asylum claim at a point of entry on the basis of family reunification, but in any individual circumstances, some may be going to Toronto, some may be going to other parts of the country as well, we should point out. The first part of your question was on the compensation that provinces may accept. So I had a conversation with Minister Frechette last week. I thought it was very helpful. They're facing serious pressure. We don't have an announcement to make today about the path forward, but we're very open to discussions about what role the federal government may play. We need to ensure that we have good information about the breakdown of costs that the province is currently incurring, which we're working collaboratively to get that information from the province of Quebec to understand what the best path forward may look like. We're open to continuing this conversation, but we have to remember this is all on an interim basis, because the real solution is going to come with the modernization of the Safe Third Country Agreement with our partners in the United States. Things are on track well. I think they both have domestic regulatory processes that they need to abide by, but the spirit of the agreement is moving in the right direction. I'm hopeful that we're going to have a permanent and lasting solution to the situation, not just at Roxham Road, but to modernize the ability for people to make asylum claims within the confines of Canadian and international law in the near future. Anyway, thank you very much, folks. I do have to run. Really appreciate the questions. And Rafi, I will take...
Minister, are you going to stop and talk to us about your conversation with Taiwan this morning?
Sure. Very pleased to have met my counterpart in Taiwan this morning, and we agreed that we are going to begin negotiations on a foreign investment protection and promotion arrangement.
When are you hoping that this might be accomplished, and why is Canada seeking this?
Well, when we announced the Indo-Pacific strategy last year, Canada is very committed to diversifying our relationship in the Indo-Pacific, creating more trade opportunities. We did go out for consultation to the Canadian community, businesses, and people about expanding this particular trading relationship. We had overwhelmingly good feedback. So today, my ministerial colleague, Minister Dang, and I agreed that we would have our negotiators get to the table and begin negotiating this arrangement.
Any concerns about the reaction from China?
Well, we've been really clear when we launched the Indo-Pacific strategy. Canada wants to diversify into the region. There are excellent people-to-people ties with Taiwan, but also with many other countries in the Indo-Pacific. Just very recently, I spent quite a lot of time in the region, and actually I think some of you were with me over there in the region. This is really about growing and expanding those commercial ties in the Asia-Pacific, and we're starting here with Taiwan.
Are you speeding this up because of the Chinese spy balloon? Like, they're provoking us, so we're provoking them?
No, we went to consultations over a year ago to the Canadian public about entering into an arrangement with Taiwan, a foreign investment protection and promotion. I'll just call it FIPA from now on. But we went out to the Canadian public, and we heard from the Canadian public and from the Canadian business, and now is just the time that work has concluded, and as a result, I'm launching those negotiations.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks so much. Thanks.
Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui doit rester en poste? Il y a des gens qui ont une lettre de 200 signataires, dont M. Rocher, une partie de la communauté musulmane, qui disent que c'est pas la bonne personne pour le poste.
On a décidé de donner la chance au coureur et c'est une poste importante. Elle a des atouts très importants. Je sais qu'elle ne fait pas l'unanimité, mais on va donner la chance au coureur.
Vous, est-ce que vous êtes 100% à l'aise avec ça?
J'ai dit ce que j'ai dit. On va donner la chance. J'ai exprimé mes opinions déjà, et on va donner la chance au coureur.
Est-ce que vous critiquez l'islam, c'est être anti-musulman? Parce que c'est un peu ça aussi le problème du poste, là, pour les gens qui réclament son abolition. C'est de dire qu'avec le concept d'islamophobie, ça veut dire qu'on ne peut pas critiquer l'islam sans se faire traiter
On doit, évidemment, on doit combattre l'islamophobie. Il y a tout le temps, j'étais prof pendant 30 ans, il y a tout le temps des façons de dire quelque chose d'une manière acceptable.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez des propos de Mme Leblanc sur la loi 96?
On va laisser le comité faire son travail.
Merci. A firearm bill?
Yes.
The two amendments were retirés.
C'est correct. Retiré.
Retiré.
Oui, en
donc,
français.
vous en pensez quoi? Les conservateurs disent que vous allez revenir avec d'autres amendements.
D'abord, il faut reconnaître que le but le projet de loi C-21 et le but de toutes nos politiques est de protéger nos communautés de la violence causée par les armes à feu. Et la vision de les amendements est pour adresser et renforcer notre bannière pour les armes d'assaut. C'est un type d'arme à feu qui est créé pour un temps de guerre et pas pour nos communautés. Donc, on va continuer.
Comment vous allez faire ça maintenant qu'il y a
on
des
va,
amendements?
avec la collaboration avec nos collègues sur tous les côtés de la Chambre. Je viens de parler avec mon nouveau...
De nouveaux amendements, un nouveau projet de loi? Lequel des deux?
Non. Je vais parler, j'ai l'opportunité de parler avec mon nouveau homologue à l'MPD, Peter Julian, qui le rôle de critique sur la sécurité publique. C'est une bonne conversation et je reste en contact avec mon homologue sur le bloc. Je pense qu'il y a un espace pour continuer la conversation sur le travail, pas seulement sur la question de l'avenir d'armes d'assaut, mais au même temps sur le reste de le projet de loi C-21. C'est une très bonne politique.
Police se souvient, craint que ça n'ait jamais lieu, là, la pollution des armes.
Oui, je partageais les préoccupations. Je sais que pas seulement la police se souvient, mais même tous les organismes qui représentent, qui sont les voix pour la communauté de victimes et survivants sont très préoccupés. Ils veulent et ils continuent d'encourager le gouvernement de continuer le travail sur les armes d'assaut parce que c'est un type d'arme à feu qui n'a aucune place dans nos communautés.
Mais justement, certains vous reprochent d'avoir laissé le champ libre au lobby des armes à feu pour déformer ce qu'étaient vos deux amendements. Quelle part de responsabilité est-ce que vous prenez dans le fait que certaines personnes auraient peut-être mal compris à quoi allaient servir ces deux amendements-là et pourquoi les avoir présentés si tard aussi?
Comme j'avais mentionné le dernier vendredi, il faut reconnaître que le processus de consultation a besoin de renforcement, plus d'énergie, plus de focus. Et ça, c'est la raison que je suis en train d'engager avec tous les Canadiens. J'ai un très bon voyage à le Yukon. Avant ça, des engagements au Québec avec des chasseurs, avec des propriétaires, avec des communautés qui représentent des Autochtones. Et avec cet engagement, je suis confiant et optimiste qu'on peut avoir une conversation qui est basée sur le fait. Et avec les faits, et avec le focus, je reste confiant qu'on peut trouver des solutions pour adresser la question sur les armes d'assaut. Parce que c'est un type d'arme à feu qui a causé plein de tragédies causées par les fusillades, par exemple à Port Picatruro, le Polytechnique. Ça, c'est les raisons. C'est les gens, c'est les survivants, c'est les victimes, c'est toutes les familles avec qui j'ai une expérience très profonde. Ça, c'est l'inspiration pour le travail qu'il faut continuer.
But what was it that actually convinced you to withdraw the amendment? People have been asking you to do this for weeks. What did someone finally say to you that made that decision happen?
Well, first, I think it's important to take a step back and recognize that the work that we are doing to ban assault-style rifles, which is work that we advanced in 2020 with an order in council, is important because these are guns that have no place in our communities. They've caused tragedies in Nova Scotia, in Quebec, and elsewhere, and it is because of the conversations that we've had with victims and survivors who asked us to continue and to complete the work around banning assault-style rifles that we said that we were open to the amendments. When we tabled those amendments, there was obviously many concerns that were expressed, not only with regards to the substance of those amendments, but equally with regards to the process and the manner in which we consulted on those amendments. And so having taken stock of that, we took the decision to withdraw them so that we could create the space for ongoing dialogue. So that's where we're at, and I think now going forward, I'm hopeful that we have the space to have a very intentional and focused conversation with all of our colleagues around this issue. I think stepping back from the question of the amendments, it's also important to recognize that the government has taken significant strides, not only with respect to smart and common sense policies around the safe and responsible use of firearms, through the national ban on assault-style firearms, through the national handgun freeze, but equally through investments at the border. Over the last 2 years, $450 million for the CBSA to stop illegal trafficking of guns into the country. And finally, we've been talking a lot recently about how we can stop violent crime before it starts. That's precisely what the vision of the Building Safer Communities Fund is. It's a $250 million federal initiative, which we are rolling out across the country in partnership with organizations who know those who are at risk and who know how to give them the skills and the experience and the confidence that they need to walk the right path. So, yes, we need to continue the conversation about what we are doing around assault-style firearms, but it has to be seen in the bigger context of a comprehensive plan and strategy to reduce gun violence, and that is something that we are going to continue.
Last question. Are you still looking at regulating the firearms that would have been caught in this amendment? After just a few weeks ago, Minister Hutchins stood beside you and said there's still 19,000 other long guns people can buy. So are you still looking at regulating the hunting rifles that would be caught in this amendment?
Well, Minister Hutchins and many of the members of both our rural and Indigenous caucuses make the point that first that hunting, being a gun owner, and certainly within Indigenous communities that I have I've spoken with, that this is not just a hobby for them, it's a way of life, and we have to respect that. And that is precisely the conversation that I've been having since the bill was tabled and will continue to have with regards to the amendment. I think Minister Hutchins also made the very good observation that even after we've taken the decision to ban assault-style firearms through the 2020 order in council, that there's still a very robust market within which hunters and collectors and trappers and Indigenous communities will have access to. Where I think our focus needs to be now is to have that conversation with our parliamentary colleagues. The Standing Committee on Public Safety continues to study Bill C-21. This is important work. It is urgent work. It is urgent because we continue to have challenges around gun crime, and we owe it to the victims and the survivors and the families and all Canadians to put in place smart policies, investments in law enforcement and at our borders, and finally in the preventative strategies that will stop gun crime before it starts. And it is only through the collective effort and energy to advance that plan that we can address this issue, and that's precisely my focus. Thank you very much.